What is up? I thought I had this. So, check this out. I think I'm going to stick this on the back wall. It is sharp. This actually was sharpened by a professional place brought it to. And I think I'm going to stick this on the back wall. Sometimes I like to stand in the front window when there's people walking down the street, because you can see inside the house if I have nothing on the window there. And there's weird looks people give me. But that is not going to be what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about Hedron, Hex, and Icosa. What is going on? We have this almost trifecta of tokens where there's an interplay between all of them and how they actually work and the nuances of like what's actually going on between them. And something else that I thought about when I was having a conversation with Jesse from Liquid Loans, although he doesn't associate with Liquid Loans anymore, that's how everybody knows him, where when you think about an auction, we're going to get a special guest on too, the expert on Hedron, and this is according to Alex, the person behind him, we are going to have the expert on for Hedron as well as Icosa. This is according to the founder. He actually talks to Crypto Sloth about feedback. But what happens when in about 80 days, we have a liquidation event in Hedron, and there's several variables to consider. You have the price in which you're paying Hedron. That is a variable that is volatile. You have HSIs, which is related to Hex, also a variable, also volatile. So you have volatility squared right there. And then you have the third, which is a little bit more hard to quantify, but it's time, right? You have 80 days left. And in that time, you could see a big difference in those prices of Hedron and or Hex over that period of time. And I want to know what do you think? Is there going to be enough demand? What do you guys think? Is there going to be enough demand to soak up in a 24-hour period to soak up 3,000 HSIs? Do you think there's going to be enough? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And without further ado, let's bring in the man himself. That is the wrong intro.
I was going to say, dude, you bumming GRC stuff now?
I am. I was like,
copyright your ass, dude.
he's got all the cool he's got all like the cool like intro pieces here. So I was like, let me take these. I bet There we go. Crypto in the evening. Here we go. We have Crypto Sloth. What's good, bro? How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. So it's awesome to be back on your channel, man. Was it the second time or third time? I don't remember.
I don't know. All I remember is that I enjoy the conversations. And
that's all that matters, I guess. Right?
Yes. And hopefully you guys do too. If you're here and you do enjoy this content, Chad and Alan, what's good, guys? Make sure to take a second and just share this out on Twitter. Do me a favor on that. Let's get this information out to more people, because there's in my opinion, I believe Sloth has a similar opinion on this, but love to hear other people's points of view. There's a massive undervaluation of Hedron right now in a bear market, right? Think about this. You have a bear market where shit's down 80-90% plus, and you have an undervaluation in that marketplace, right? I would say that Hex is pretty close to fair. I don't see anything like bad there. If it's down at 1 cent, I'd be like, okay, cool. It's maybe slightly undervalued. Great time to pick up some shit. 3.5 to 5.5 cents. Cool. Seems pretty fair market right
Solid
there.
DCA. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what do you think about that? Do you think, and then I want to get into some of the other stuff in a second. What do you think about the Hedron being undervalued in an 80 or 90% down market right now?
I think it's opportunity, baby. That's what I think.
I agree.
But no, I agree. So for those of you listening, what Sam is referring to is like there's the price of whatever Hedron is, and then there is this like value that Icosa could be, or sorry, Hedron value Hedron could be if you calculated like how much it would cost to get a single Hedron if you stake like 5555. So like you take the dollar value of a 5555 B share, and then you divide that by 5555, and then that's what you get. That's the average cost, or that's the cost of each Hedron for the money you put into the hex stake. And so we can kind of like associate this with maybe saying like some kind of intrinsic value or like some kind of metric for like where the price of Hedron should be. And when we think about the launch, or sorry, not the launch, but the HSIs that are coming on the liquidation market, having a metric like this to see like, okay, like where could the price go if people are trying to buy up Hedron off the market to get cheaper HSIs from the liquidation. This is a potential like goalpost that could be reached later on when that demand hits.
So let's go through just a quick example so that anybody who catches this can grasp that. Okay, so say it costs $300 for a B share, 15 years, right, out in hex.
Yeah.
So one B share equates to one Hedron per day. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Right, just to make sure. Okay. And then when you're doing this, you're taking so you probably know the math off the top of your head or something, but 15 years is X number of days, right? So it's $300 divided by X number of days. Is that what you're doing?
Just the max stake length, 5555, because that's the most capital efficient if you're trying to get Hedron. And so that's 5 cents per Hedron if it's a $300 stake, and it's if you're getting one Hedron for that entire one B share for that entire thing. That doesn't seem right. But that doesn't seem right. That seems way too high.
Let me pull up the calculator. So we got, well, let's say a B share is $300 divided by 5,555 days. Yeah, 5 cents. That was 5 cents per day, so to speak, per Hedron.
Yeah.
That would be assuming that that would be like if we were for people to think about this or wrap their heads around it. It's like one way to think about like buying a future Hedron.
So that is if one B share was $300. So Hedron could be 5 cents. Yes, if one B share is $300. So it's like way far away from where we're at now, which is why the number was like 5 cents for a Hedron, for one Hedron token. But let's like, I think one T share right now is like 7,740, 5555. Do the math real quick just to make sure. Yeah, that's about a T share. So then 7,740 times, let's say hex is just 5 cents right now. That's about $387 for one T share. And so divide that by 1,000 to get the B shares. And so it's about 38 cents per B share right now for a 5555 B share. Divide that by Quattro Cinco, and then you get 5 zeros and a 6.
So, okay, perfect. Let's go through this a little bit slower. Okay, so we've got the T share, right? The T share, 23,500 hex, whatever that number is. Hex is 5 cents a share, right? Or something like this, right? So what is that? 23,500 times 5 cents per share. That is $1,175, right? For one T share. But that's for one day, right? So we can do this in both ways. We can think about it as an individual day or putting this out in 15 years, right? Because I bet they might tell different stories, which could provide us an interesting insight. So let's see, 2,350 times 5 cents per share. We got $1,175 for one T share for one day. Now, to convert this into the equivalent amount that we were talking about in hex, we divide this by 1,000. Right, so we've got $1.17.5. So it's $1.17.5 in terms of that's how much a B share costs if you break down the T share down to B shares. And then if you take that's just the cost of the B shares, $1.17. per. That's a big fucking difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's a massive difference relative to 6 cents today, or like the 5 zeros and then we're at 2 right now. 5 zeros and a 2.3 or something.
I think we're at 5 zeros and 2. Yeah, is that the price right now?
Well, this morning it was.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, somewhere around there. Anyways.
So if you do it over 5.555,
Mm-hmm.
that's a 6 cents. So what is it? To talk to people about what that means? What is the 6 cents? That's where the equivalent would be today if it was at fair market, in the way that we're describing it, a Hedron price. Not 6 cents. I'm sorry, 5 zeros and then a 6.
Yeah,
right?
5 zeros and then a 6. Yeah, and so if we're at the current price, which is what is it? 5 zeros and a 2. So that's
it was this morning. I'll check right now.
Yeah.
Let's see here, economics, and I'll pull this up for Hedron. You guys can let us know if we're missing any of the deets in the chat here. 5 zeros and then 258 is the price.
And so then let's see, I'll put that in my 2, 5, and then an 8. And so I'm getting right now about 27x till the price that we're calculating is what I'm getting right now. Yeah.
So 20. Please go ahead.
Yeah, 27x. So if people are buying up Hedron off the market, and this is an if people are buying it, yeah. Hey,
appreciate it, Alan. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, dude. Thank you so much.
So if people say there are a bunch of HSIs on the liquidation market, which we know is going to happen around like November time, and people are buying up the Hedron price, this is like the potential price it would reach until it makes sense, where you could just take Hex off the market, stake it 5555, take the advance on that Hedron, and then that would cost the same. Like the amount of Hedron you would get for the price you paid would cost the same as you buying it off the market. So then all of a sudden people might be incentivized to go do the Hex staking route. But that's essentially like the ceiling of the Hedron price in that case.
But the one nuance there, which came to me as we're talking, is time value of money.
Yeah.
We're calculating on a 15-year time frame, which doesn't take into consideration the
volatility.
pulling that. Yeah, because there's going to be a premium there, like getting access to it today versus getting access to it over the course of 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you could consider like the advance on there, but there's going to be a discount on there because the you have to pay a little bit of interest on that.
Well, that's if you pay it back. So if you're just trying to get, so the price that we've been talking about for Hedron, that's the price where if I put $1,000 into a Hex stake, I could advance $1,000 worth of Hedron back, right? So
that is not the 5 zeros and a 6 number. That is a different. Is that accurate or no?
I was assuming that was the number.
Because I thought the number for that was a little bit higher, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what Sloth is saying is, at some point, you get one. Just correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember correctly, for every B share you own, you get one Hedron. Is that accurate?
For every B share that you own, you get one Hedron. That is correct.
Okay, so if you own 1,000 B shares, right? Say if you owned 1,000 B shares and the price was 0.00006 times 1,000 B shares, that would be equivalent to about half of a cent Brazology. What's good, bro? How you doing? And Ted, how are you, sir? And Lion of God, what's good? So at 1,000 B shares at the price that we just calculated, that's only 6 cents per day. I'm sorry, half of a cent per day that you're getting from the Hedron price.
So I pulled up my calculator, and for the ceiling of the Hedron price, it is 4 zeros and a 7. Yeah. So if you take the dollar value of a B share that it's at currently, you divide it by 5555, then you get 4 zeros and a 7. And the current dollar value of a 5, and this is a 555 B share, not a normal B share. That's a small difference that's there. It's about $391
of advanceable against a T share.
And then you multiply that by 1,000 because that's a T share. Yeah. So just
Yes.
divide that by, so that number you're getting, the 6 cents, you need to divide that by 1,000 again, and that's where the extra zeros come from. So the current price, there is 5 zeros and a 2, and then that value that we're talking about, that price that we're talking about, B shares, a 5555 B share divided by 5555 is 4 zeros and a 7, and that's the 27x that we're talking about.
Gotcha. And talk to me, what is that 27x, if it gets there, what does that represent? Because it doesn't actually give us, if it's $1,000 for a t-shirt, it doesn't give us $1,000 in advanceable Hedron, I don't believe.
Well, actually that number would. That number
Can we go through that example, please?
Yeah. So for this example, the way I've calculated is what is the average cost of Hedron for the amount of money that you put into a hex stake. So what I did is essentially calculate, okay, if I put so much money into the hex stake, and then I take that number, that dollar value, and I divide it by the stake length, because each day you get 1 Hedron. So each Hedron isn't worth 1 B share. Each Hedron is worth 1 B share divided by the stake length, because you get a Hedron per day. And so that number that you calculate is how much each Hedron costs in terms of how much the stake costs. Now, of course, there's hex on top of that too, so it's not like a direct cost. But if the Hedron price ever reached that price that I just calculated, then what would happen is that the Hedron that you get in return is equal to the money that you put into the stake. Now, the reason why that the advanceable Hedron would be the same dollar value as the money you put in the stake is because when you advance your Hedron, you get all of it up front. You don't have to wait. So if you did a 1 T-share stake for 5555, you would get 5,555,000 Hedron on day one if you took your advance. Multiply that by the number that we calculated, and that would be the same dollar value that you got that you put into the stake.
Okay, so so I think so. I'm going to paraphrase just to make sure that I'm fully understanding this, and hopefully this is helpful to people who are watching / listening. Okay, so we have the fair value of Hedron as of today, August 24th, as there's 4 zeros, and then I think you said 74. Is that correct?
7, yeah. Just
7. Okay, so then we take that, and we're going to multiply that times 5,555 days, because that's how many that's how many Hedron days we're going to get, right? How many we're going to get. Plus, we have to know if we have 1 T share, right? Then that means that's how much we're going to get. So we multiply 0.0007 times 5,555 days, because that's the length, to give us the number of the next number we need to multiply times 1,000, right? Assuming that we had owned 1 T share, that gives me a value of $388.85. So if I go to, let's do this example, because I think this would actually be very helpful if we actually pull it up in real time. Let me pull up, what is it? Go.hex. Is that where I'm going to find the information to compare it to a T share rate 5555?
Yeah. So let's take the hex price right now, and I'll look up the exact hex price, and it is 5.182 cents. And you said what was the dollar value you got? 380.
388.85.
388.85. So you would get 7,503.85 hex.
Okay, so what you did is take 388.85 divided by 5, correct? For 5 cents hex.
Yeah, I just put it into a calculator that calculates how much hex you get. Yeah. So $388.85 gets you $7,503.85. Hex. I said cents. I meant hex. My
okay. No worries. Okay. So what now? What I would like to know is the cost for that 555 1 T share. Do I pull that up on Go.hex? Like if on this site, is that where I find that information?
Oh yeah. So go to stake.
Okay, hold on. Let me just sign into the MetaMask thing here. We got signing in here. Boom. Okay. So I'm on here. Where do we go? Stake. Okay. So now 5555.
5555, and then type 7503.
7503.85.
0.85. Yep. And then that's a 0.96 of a T-share.
0.96. So very, very close to one T-share.
The reason why it's like that is because the number I gave you is just around. I didn't give you all the decimals.
Yes, correct. The point, the 4 zeros and a 7 is probably 2, 3.
There's a couple. There's like a 0 and then some other numbers. So it's essentially one T-share. So what we just did is we said, okay, this is the average cost per Hedron that I get from this one T-share stake, and then we back calculated that dollar value into what the hex would be, and then how many T-shares that would be, and we saw that they were equal. So that we just demonstrated that for the current prices that we're seeing, that for that one T-share stake, if the price of Hedron was this much, you would get the exact same dollar value back. Now, why is that important, Sam? It's very important for the Hedron price because anytime the price of Hedron goes above that 4 zeros and a 7, then there's an arbitration opportunity there where you can buy hex off the market, stake at 5555, advance your Hedron, and all of a sudden that dollar value of the Hedron is worth more than the dollar value you put into the stake.
Okay, so we got to dissect this. I'm gonna break it down real quick because this is a beautiful thing that there's not a lot of people who are talking about this. Yes, let's say hi to the chat real quick, and then I want to paraphrase some of this stuff. I don't know how to say your name. Tadzu.
Jaconcy.
Jaconcy, what's good, bro? Good to see you here in cryptographics. Hey, it's great to see you, brother. We'll have to do a show sometime. Benny Blanco and Ted, I appreciate you, bro. Thank you for all the support in here. Brisby, Brizology, what's good? And Chad, hey, bro, I sent you a message on Instagram. Okay, let's go through and paraphrase what you were just talking about because this is a beautiful thing, and I want to paraphrase it, and then I want to understand why this should move up there, right? Because that's where we talk about the Icosa piece of it. Bringing the Icosa piece into it is what helps give us that 27x, right? By the way, I'd like a 27x in my bag, guys. Just so you know,
27x in a bull market before hex goes up. I'm not complaining,
right? And we haven't even got into that piece. Like this is going to be this fair market value adjusts with
hex.
So yes, okay.
Yeah.
What we just calculated is the fair market value for basically the break-even price, you can think of it, for Hedron, so that you could make a hex stake for $1,000 through get an HSI hex stake. So you take your $1,000 worth of hex, you put that through your HSI. Now you immediately borrow all the Hedron on your 555 stake. And what does that do? Well, that captures all that 15 years of Hedron that you would have been able to mint on a daily basis, and it brings it to time 0. Yep. And it costs you just a smidge. But what effectively that does is it gives you over $1,000 worth of Hedron. So if it's above that price, so talk about the opportunity there. If it's above that price, somebody can use this to make money, right? You could let this just go. You want to touch on how somebody can use this to make money? Because I personally believe this is so far abstract for a lot of people, right? Like you see this, I see this, and hopefully the people who are watching see this. But like this is not like super like Bitcoin shit, right? This is like a lot more abstract. Is the further you go in abstraction,
a lot cooler.
Very, very cool, super interesting. But the further you go in terms of abstraction, the more people you lose. So I could fully see this being past that point of 4 zeros and a 7, right? I could see this going higher than that and having this opportunity last at certain times because the knowledge, the grasp of this concept is not what fully like understood in the ethos of this community.
Yeah. So you want me to talk about what happens if the price of Hedron goes above that 4 zeros and a 7 if hex stays the same price?
Correct. Because that's also the other variable that we have to get into after this.
Yeah. So it can go a lot higher if the price of hex goes up, but we won't get there yet. So say hex stays the same price, 5.1 cents, and then Hedron does a 27x and gets to that 4 0 and a 7. and then say people continue to buy Hedron, and say we get to 4 zeros and an 8, 4 zeros and a 9, 3 zeros and a 1, whatever it might be. That delta between the price that's higher than 4 zeros and a 7 and the 4 zeros and a 7 represents an opportunity to immediately profit off any kind of cash that you have. Now, the reason why that is because when you take say $1,000 and then you buy hex with it, you take that hex and you stake it for 5,555. And the reason you do that is because that's how you get the most advanceable Hedron immediately. So anything less than a max stake length is you're leaving money on the table in this specific situation. Now, when you do that, the Hedron that you advance is at the price of that higher value. Let's say it's 3 zeros and a 1. But the amount that you paid per Hedron for making the stake is the 4 zeros and a 7. So each Hedron costs market value is 3 zeros and a 1, but you only paid 4 zeros and a 7. So that difference is all profit if you sell it on the market. And so now you've taken $1,000 and essentially, let's say it's 3 zeros and a 14 to make it an easy double. You've taken that 1,000, you've gotten that Hedron, you sold it on the market, and now you've gotten $2,000 in your wallet for free. All you've done is taken advantage of an inefficiency that exists in the market, but that's different from normal arbitrage. Normal arbitrage is capital inefficiencies amongst liquidity pools. This is a capital inefficiency in between a smart contract mintable function and a liquidity pool that exists. So like the semantics or the properties of it are different, but the end outcome is the same, where you're able to profit because people overbought the Hedron coin. Now, we want to stop there before I keep going on.
Okay, so let's talk about. So this is a beautiful thing too. If hypothetically somebody were purchasing Hedron daily, like I am, using profits from LP to just buy some Hedron every single day. Not saying anybody should do this. Not financial advice. My choice. When I see what's going on, I'm like, this is fucking stupid not to do this. So it's my choice to do this. Now, if somebody does have a Hedron bag, this is also. If this happens, I'm going to say if/when, because I do believe it will happen. That is a perfect time to dump on the market. That is a perfect time to dump on other people's heads. Because if you have a bag of Hedron and you understand the concept that Sloth just shared with us, you can sell when it's above that market where it currently is. Remember, this target we're going to talk about in a second with how Hex and the B share rate affects this fair market value of Hedron, and then the support underneath it we're going to get into after with Icosa. But if you have a bag of Hedron and you have the capacity to do what we just did, super simple, right? We weren't planning on this, but if you don't understand this fully, Sloth didn't know I was going to do this, book a call. He just started his shit to book a call with him. You can go out there and pay for an hour and he can walk you through this. I would bet he fucking build a calculator so that you can just grab the variables if you don't fully grasp all the pieces. And he'll be like, yeah, take this spreadsheet. You get this number from here. You get this number from here. You get this number from here. Here's a link to all those ones. And you book a call. He'll show you how to use it and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a bag, this is the perfect opportunity to dump on people because you know it's overvalued. Now, one thing to consider is that it has the capacity to be overvalued and sit overvalued because of fees, right? You have fees involved of doing some of these things. So depending on how the fees are in the marketplace, it could sit marginally overvalued and just kind of stay marginally overvalued in perpetuity because of that. But we're talking about much more higher aberrations to that than just marginally overvalued. But I would love to get into how Hex and the B share rate is going to influence the fair value of Hedron, right? So we've got 4 zeros and a 7 fair market for Hedron. Now, where does the B share rate play into this, right? Because the B share rate is going to be becoming more scarce over time. So I'd love for you to expand upon all that.
Yeah. So the easiest way to understand this, and for those of you, I'm sure most of you guys in here are familiar with the T share rate, which is also the B share rate, and that is in Hex terms, it always goes up. So if somebody ends a stake, and if they get the maximum ROI in the system at that time, the code calculates a new rate that is the cost per T share, so they can't stake the same amount of Hex for the same amount of time and get the same number of shares. And so because this number is always going up, and the amount of Hedron that you can mint is due to the number of B shares that you can get, or the B shares that a stake has, that means that as it gets harder to obtain B shares, or as B shares become more expensive, both in hex terms, but potentially dollar terms if the dollar value of hex goes up, or stays the same, because if the T-share rate's going up and hex stays the same, it's become more, and the hex price stays the same, it becomes more expensive to get the B shares without price going up. But anyways, as B shares get more expensive, that means that that fair value, that I'll call it the ceiling value of Hedron, that will naturally goes up as well, because that each Hedron that you get from a hex stake gets more expensive too. So then this is the cool part about the system, and I'm going to take it one step further, because I think this is the perfect time to make this point. This is the cool thing about the Hedron system, and you'll find the same property in the Icosa system too. If the price of Hedron goes about to that ceiling price, and if for some reason it goes above it in magnitude and in time, so it's like high enough for people to be able to take advantage of it, and long enough for people to be able to take advantage of it in a reasonable time frame, not just like, half a second. If that occurs, the way you take advantage of it is by taking hex and staking it for 5555, the max stake length. Well, what does that do? That takes hex off the market. And by taking hex off the market and punting it out 15 years, you're shrinking the supply of hex that is able to be borrowed. So you're increasing the price of hex because you're buying it. So you're putting like USDC in, taking hex out, that ratio puts the price up. And then you're taking that supply that you bought off the market, and then you're punting it out 15 years. So that can't be sold. And this is the main value proposition of hex in the first place. Shrinking supply, punting it in the future, and you get paid inflation as a reward for protecting the price. When people take advantage of that aberration by arbitraging, they are locking hex for 555 up, and that presumably will pump the price of hex. And what I just described before I talked about all that was that as the price goes up, the ceiling also goes up. So now the Hedron price, say the ceiling's right here, Hedron reached the ceiling, went above it. It gets arbed down, so it gets back to the level, but it goes back to the level, but then it brings the ceiling up some more. So now it's given Hedron more room to grow if it ever repeats that again. So Hedron goes up and then pulls hex with it, goes up and pulls hex with it. And this is the positive feedback loop people talk with the Icosa Hedron system.
This is fascinating stuff. Before we get into thank you for taking the time to explain that. Before we get into Icosa, I'd like to talk about the liquidations. So I kind of preface this like in the preview with you and I, where there could be some issues with auctions, right? So some things to consider are the different variables involved, right? You have the psychology of the individual going into an auction, right? When somebody goes into an auction, they think that they're going to get a deal, right? That's where you're like, oh, I'm going to go.
That's why you're there.
Exactly. You're like, I want to go here because maybe I can get a 5%, 10%, 40% discount on XYZ. Mm-hmm. But you have the other variables. There's three of them that come to mind right off the top of my head. You have Hedron price, because what are we going to be buying these HSI stakes with? The price of Hedron. What is the price of Hedron? It is volatile. Now, when we look at the other variables in here, we have two more. We have HSIs. How are the prices? We did it. I think we did it live on a different stream a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. Calculate the value of an HSI. Right? You guys can go check out that channel where we go through and calculate the value of an HSI. But you can calculate the HSI, which is based on the price of hex primarily. Now you have the third variable, which is time, and the interplay with these over that period of time, because we've got 80 days or so before this comes up. Then we have a feeding frenzy. Think of like those videos you see online where some dude's got a 5-gallon bucket of like alligator feed or dead fucking fish as he's feeding alligators, and he throws it out there, and there's a bazillion alligators, and they're just going like it's a frenzy. There's water all over the place. You see tails in the air. They're jumping at each other trying to get this dead fish, and that is in the environment where there's enough alligators to eat up that whole entire bucket. Mm-hmm. But what if let's talk about, because this is a possibility, in 80 days, right? In 80 days, when this shit comes out, the liquidations and Hedron, that is, if there's not enough demand, right? Because it happens in a 24-hour period. We have about 3,000. We have about 3,000 HSIs coming on the market. And what if there's not enough demand for these 3,000? What if the price? How does that influence Hedron first, and then how does that potentially have a whipsaw type of an effect on Hex?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's what I would say to that. And I would say, well, there are two things to keep in mind. First is a mechanic, just based on the logistics of what happens. So say like you have these 3,000 HSIs that go on the liquidation market. They are when they enter the ability to be liquidated, what happens is somebody has to set the timer off. Somebody has to make the first bid before that 24 hours starts. Are you aware of these mechanics, Sam?
I did not, and I appreciate you diving into the details.
Yeah. So this is important because people have questions about this. Is like, how long do they stay up? Like what happens if nobody bids on them? So this mechanic is important to understand my next argument, which is why there will always be demand for these liquidations for an HSI. There's always a base demand for this stuff. Now, before the HSI gets on so when the HSI gets defaulted after the 90 days, when it gets to go to the auction, the first bid is made by somebody, just a person. Somebody runs the function to start the liquidation. And what that does is it pushes the first bid. And that first bid is the debt of the advance that was taken in the HSI. So say, for example, it was one T share that took it advance. It got 5,555,000 Hedron. That first bid to start the 24-hour liquidation timer, auction timer, would be 5,555,000 Hedron. Okay, so for say this example where there's 3,000 on the market and not everybody has time to get to every single HSI, they will just sit there without the timer having started. So some can have the timer start, and then others can sit there without the timer having been started. Say people are only able to get to 1,000, or like I don't think this is going to happen, but say the UI can only handle 1,000 at a time. Well, those 1,000 will come up. The other ones are still there. They're still on the liquidation auction. That first bid hasn't been made, so that 24-hour period hasn't started.
So I want to hear more of the points you're about to get into. But as you're saying this, I'm like, okay, opportunity, because that's how I see the world. I look for opportunity. We've got 3,000 roughly HSIs coming out in 80 days, all within a 24-hour period of time, because that's when people were putting them into the Icosa contract, which we're going to get into in a minute here. But that's an opportunity. Like, imagine hypothetically, Sloth and I decide to pool some amount with a multi-signature or something, and we put in 500 million Hedron, and we just bid on every single one of them with the expectation that somebody's going to forget about one of them, and we just get something at a fraction of the cost. I'm like saying this live in front of everybody here, but that's literally a strategy that I think would be super interesting, because there could be I wanted to get into your point next, but I think that there could be potentially not enough demand. Like it is a higher than zero probability event in the future that could take place. But you just purported that you think that there's going to be sufficient demand for these. So you were about to get into that point, and I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So my argument for that is simply like a mathematical one. So the cheapest, from what I just described, the cheapest one of these stakes could go for is the debt that it accrued, or the debt as owed on the advance that was taken on it to get it on the liquidation auction. What that means is that stake, if you waited, if the stake was liquidated for that first bid, then that stake at the end of its time would have the same amount of mintable Hedron that was made when the bid that won the auction was for that amount. So that means is the first bid will always, the person who wins HSI that is for the amount of the initial bid will always be made whole as long as they wait till the end of the stake. So it is always profitable to make that very first bid, because if you just wait, you're going to get all of your Hedron back, independent of whatever the Hedron price is, because it's within itself. And then you just get a free hex stake on top of it. All of the hex inside of it and all of the interest earned by the hex was free, because you're made whole with the Hedron that you can mint at the end of the stake. And so just because of that, I believe at least the first bid will always be made, because if somebody could get it for that price, then they will immediately profit a lot.
But do you think that I agree with that, right? Do you think that enough people understand Hedron liquidations, or do you think it's just going to be like 6 like whales and they're just like?
Well, I would say me and you understanding it is enough people to make that happen, because we will just go buy Hedron off the market to make that first bid as many times as we can for the money that we have until we get as many as we can. I'd say one person with sufficient capital is enough.
Interesting. Okay, to take all those off the market. Okay, interesting. Yep. So that is where the demand can come from to remove these off the market.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, now, go ahead.
And I think enough people, both whales, like before I've even talked about this, or we talked about this publicly, understand this too.
Okay. Maybe I'm not just giving faith, or you have a deeper understanding of the community than I do. But I'm sure that there is. Oh, from what you were just saying, you just need a handful of people.
Yeah, you don't need a lot, because anybody who makes that first bid, like if they win it, like they just it's a free hex stake is what it is.
Because then you could just advance. You could just take an advance again if you cared to take an advance on your Hedron.
Yeah, you can take the advance.
Once you acquire it, you can take. Right?
You just have to make the payments if you want to get the hex stake at the end. So the wild card here is the time aspect of it. So if it's a 5555 stake, then you have to wait 15 years to be whole. But at the end of that 15 years, you'll be made whole. And like you said, if you're like, you know what, I don't want to wait this 15 years anymore, I want to be made whole now, you just take your advance, sell it, and then the HSI goes back on the liquidation market. And no harm, no foul, because it's essentially the equivalent of holding Hedron from the time you won the auction to the time you took the advance and sold the Hedron.
A risky strategy, but I feel like, given the little bit I know in our conversations, you may have already thought about this, creating an HSI stake, advancing Hedron. Now we have a place to stake our Hedron. So what if somebody did that and they staked it for 90 days? You also don't have to make a payment for 90 days, technically. Do you want to talk about that? That's super risky, though. It's very, very risky.
Okay, everybody, we're talking about leverage, and I'm going to talk about leverage in a favorable way, but it is leverage, and there is inherent risk to that, and you're collateralizing your hex stake. So you're collateralizing a supreme asset, supreme passive income generating asset. Like you don't want to lose your hex stake, but with that being said,
don't do what we do, children.
if there was a type of leverage that was as risk-free as possible, this is the most risk-free leverage I've come across. And let me tell you why. So Sam, you're right in that these stakes won't get liquidated for 90 days, but it's not just that. You can make multiple payments up front, and then that payment doesn't have to be made until that time afterwards. So you can make the first 3 payments immediately, and then you don't have to make your first payment for 90 days, which means if day one you make 90 days worth of payments,
you have 6 months.
You have 6 months, right? Now, what is Hedron staking? Hedron staking is single-sided staking. What that means is there's no risk to your principal at all. Your principal is not in Hedron terms. So like the volatility isn't a question. So at the end of say you make the 90-day payments, so you don't have to make a payment, or you're not at risk of getting liquidated for 180 days now. Your stake length for the Hedron stake through the Icosa app is only 90 days because it's a small amount of Hedron. So you don't have to make a payment for the whole length of your stake, and your principal is intact. So Sam, what does that mean? I think you're smiling. I think you know what that means.
Correct. Because we've talked about, I don't like borrowing in crypto if you expose yourself to the volatility of the thing you're borrowing going up in value. That's like borrowing on a house, and this house, and I have debt of 275, and the house is worth 400, and then the house goes up in value, which means that the debt goes up in value, right? And that's just not a good strategy, guys. Or if it puts you at a point of liquidation, not a good strategy. But what Sloth is saying is, with how this has come out, this allows you to, bro, I want to do this just for fun. Even if you get liquidated, I don't care. I'll do something small, because this allows you to take, say, $1,000 worth of hex, put it into an HSI, then immediately advance all the Hedron against that. And guys, like, you got to think for yourself. This is like pretty fucking advanced shit. Like, definitely not saying you guys should do any of the things that we're talking about in this video. I'm willing to lose money if that's the case for fun, because I would like to experiment. I love this shit. $1,000 HSI stake, advance your Hedron, take your Hedron over to Icosa. You stake it in that pool. You earn Icosa in that pool. With what Sloth just said, you can make 3 payments, right? So you make 3 payments. That means you don't actually have to pay. And then there's a grace period. You know, if you don't pay your mortgage on my bill, it says like, hey, you don't pay the bill by like the 15th, we're not going to charge you, right? So I get 2 weeks grace period if I didn't want to pay my mortgage every single month. Well, with Hedron, you get 90 days. So if you make 3 payments, that's 90 days, plus 3 months grace period. What do you have? You have 6 months of not making a payment in Hedron. Now, if I took Hedron and I sold that, and then in 6 months, the price of Hedron has a 10x, then what that would mean is like that house example where I have $250,000 of debt on a $350,000 worth of asset. Now, the debt in say 6 months from now, instead of being $250,000 against a $350,000 house, that debt is now worth more than what it would have actually cost because I didn't hold the actual asset. But when you put it into the Icosa contract, you're not giving up your Hedron, which Sloth was saying. So this way you can earn Icosa. Now, talk about this from a profit standpoint, because so say you stake this for, just under 180 days, right? 179 days. You earn, I have no idea how much, what the amount would be. Well, let's walk through an example. Say we take $1,000 of hex to stake in for 1 T share.
I'll pull that
Yes.
up. Keep talking. I'll do the math behind you.
Okay. So we've got 1 T share, $1,000, say, in an HSI, and we pull all of the Hedron to today via the advance. How much Hedron is that going to be, roughly?
Let's see. So $1,000 gets you about 19,383 hex, which is 2.5 T shares. So 2.5 T shares. So 2.5 times 1,000, because that's the B share rate. So that's 2,500 B shares, obviously, times 5555 is 13,887,500 Hedron. So that's how much Hedron you get. And that dollar value of that Hedron is $35.
Okay. Now, $35 for 13 million and a half Hedron. How much Icosa would somebody earn? Like, based on today's rates, they're obviously going to fluctuate based on today's dollar, because Icosa is going to fluctuate. The rate is going to fluctuate. This is just a snapshot in the moment of time that is today. How much Icosa would they approximately earn if they took that 13.5 million Hedron and they put it into the Icosa staking pool for Hedron? How much would they earn over that period of time if the rate stayed the same for whatever it is? I
actually don't know. I don't think we have APRs on that number anywhere because it's variable.
I could calculate. I could see my
here. Let's use your APR that you have, and then we'll see what that is.
Let me pull this out here, because effectively, well, I've been adding to mine, so it's obviously going to be fluctuating. I've been adding to it every couple days, but if we get
So while you pull that up, I'll make a point, and that as you just saw for like that $1,000, you're only being able to yield via the leverage mechanism that we're talking about $35. And so on Ethereum, you have to take and consider gas fees with each of these actions. So the making the HSI, advancing on it, and then staking that, making the payments, and then staking the Hedron. That's 4 gas fees that you're paying. And with the Ethereum gas fees the way that they are, you're probably paying more than the amount of money that you're putting into the Hedron pool. So economically, on Ethereum, this may not make that much sense to do. But on PulseChain, it always will, because the gas fees will be insignificant. So even though the dollar value of what you're yielding on may be low, let's take the example that the context we're in now, a massive bear market where there are 10 to 100x growth opportunities to the next top, right? $35 now, 100x later, is $3,500, right? And then so you're essentially yielding on $3,500 from now until the top, if you sell the top. Like it's the same. It's just the number doesn't get there until a later time point. So on PulseChain, when the fees are really, really low, it can always be worth compounding your capital, even if it's less than $50, because you're getting more coins and the gas fees are negligible. On Ethereum, it probably doesn't make as much sense unless you're a larger player. But that's the point I wanted to get across.
Thank you. So very, very rudimentary data here. But if I took the approximate amount of Icosa that I'm getting per day for my Hedron stake and divided it by my Hedron tokens, it gives me a large number. Multiply that times 13.5 million, right, which would be the equivalent of $1,000 worth of hex put into a 555 stake and then advanced against that we just went through. And then I multiply that times 179 days. That would give me approximately, assuming the rate stayed the same, 10.35 Icosa. So we have 10.35. What's the price of Icosa? $1.50?
Yeah, something like that. That's a good enough estimation. It's
$1.54.
Yep.
Okay, so that's about $15-16. So it doesn't sound terribly great at $1,000, but when you think about this, that $15 probably just paid your bill for the next 6-8 months of Hedron cost, right?
And let's extrapolate this into the future. Like do you think hex could ever go to $1? Like, do you think that's a probability? Yes. So that just the fact that hex is going to $1 is going to pull the prices of all the stuff now. So yeah, you know what, the amount of money relative to the number of coins we're talking about is low, but we're playing a long-term game here. We're setting ourselves up financially so that in the future, when the price appreciation matches the value, the intrinsic value of these coins, then that's when we're going to be able to take advantage of all these different cool, nuanced, advanced strategies to generate passive income and get extra yield on top of our bags. That's what we're doing. We're preparing for the future, even though economically for a lot of us, it might not make sense now. When we maintain our bags and add to them over the next 2 to 10 years, and we're able to get $10,000 out of our advanced Hedron at a time. Now we're talking about real money that can pay your bills on a day-to-day basis, only for free in this example, because it's advanced Hedron that you're not risking losing, that you're going to pay your advance off in the future. So you're holding your assets. Your assets are accumulating more because it's a hex stake, right? So you're always earning hex in the background of all of this. And then you're just taking the leverage with the Hedron optionality that it has. And then you're just earning passive income on that without ever risking your collateral.
So there's many different ways you could play this out. I'm glad we went down this road because this is fascinating. Okay, so because it wasn't possible 2 weeks ago, right? We didn't think about this. It wasn't possible 2 weeks ago.
I was thinking about this 2 weeks ago.
Well, you were thinking about this. This is why it's great to talk to you about this.
I was literally in the gym just thinking about all this stuff, and then it hit me like a truck. I'm like, whoa, risk-free leverage. What? Like out of nowhere.
No. Yeah. So as we're going through this, I'm like, okay, wait a second. So say you get 10 Icosa, and right now, don't think about the dollar amount as Sloth was just saying. Think about building for your future, right? So perpetually building for your future. Your future gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Before you know it, your future is gargantuan, and you're living in this bigger than you could have ever dreamed world of whatever you envisioned for your life. Now. You could take this 10 Icosa, flip it. You could take this 10 Icosa and stake it. You could take this 10 Icosa and put it into hex and repeat the process and add more Hedron on here to continue. This is fascinating.
This is a lot of options, right? So like just take the Icosa example. So you leverage your hex stake in a relatively risk-free manner and get free yield, and then you yield on the free yield in the first place. And so it just continues to loop. And then what do you get from the Icosa yield? More Icosa and more Hedron. So that ends, and then you just refill both of the free bags that you just got. And this can be repeated in perpetuity until you want to cash out for whatever reasons you want.
And this also, at the 179-day mark, right? You could take one payment worth of whether it's your Icosa you're pulling from your stack, and make one payment in Hedron terms on the loan you just took. And that extends that out for 120 days. And you can do another stake on there and convert the rest to more Hedron to put it back in something.
I think what you would want to do is completely pay the advance off and then redo it again. Because if you did it the way you're describing, your Hedron that you're yielding on starts to shrink over time.
Gotcha.
So you just pay the whole thing off, and then now you have the same number of Hedron yielding.
The only variable there is that for people to really kind of utilize this, you got to do it like in the middle of the night, or like you were saying, PulseChain. Because like the fees are gonna fucking eat your shit up real quick.
And this is really why I'm talking about like understanding these things now, so that when the context, our environment facilitates or makes it opportune, presents the opportunity to do these things, you're ready to go. Like you already know what the world needs to look like for you to be able to profit. You're just waiting for the world to conform around the knowledge you have right now. And here we go. If you want more strategies like this and how to tailor it to your specific bags, hit me up on Twitter, Crypto Sloth. I got one-on-one consults for everybody, baby.
Yes, you want to share your Twitter here in the chat real quick. I'm going to go through and touch on some of these while you grab your Twitter. Okay, so JA, do we see bigger jump on day one of PulseChain of Hedron, Icosa, more days of staked hex and minted Hedron, or is it less for those that are impatient and mint early? Do you understand that question?
I think he's asking like if when PulseChain releases, will we get more Hedron minted or more Icosa minted because the hex stakes will have been around longer, or is it less for those that were impatient and mint early? Okay, so I think this will answer the question. Whatever you do on Ethereum gets exactly copied on PulseChain. So if somebody minted on Ethereum, those coins will also be minted on PulseChain. If they don't mint, they won't be minted on PulseChain. So at time zero, everything is exactly the same. And then from time zero going forward, you have to perform two actions to have the equivalent state exist on the other side. So there wouldn't be more Hedron or less Hedron on PulseChain unless people start minting differently after it launches. But at time point zero, it's exactly the same.
So that actually is a perfect segue, because one of the things that I wanted to ask you about on this is we haven't even talked. We've talked a bunch over the last 2 weeks or so, and we haven't even talked about free copies of all this shit, right? Like, this thing is, we just calculated 27x below like a ceiling price or whatever you want to call it for Hedron is, and everybody's going to get a free copy on Pulse of this. So how have you thought about that? Like, because it's going to open up some of the strategies that we just talked about that are capable. Because right now with fees, unless you do it like super early, the other day I actually paid a fee of like 87 cents or 78 cents or something. I was like, holy shit,
this is great.
This is amazing.
And that's still technically expensive. Like 87 cents is a lot for a single transaction, but we have so much like Stockholm syndrome at this point where we're like, oh, thank you so much for the really only mildly expensive fee.
Yeah, like it's crazy. So this is I think that if you believe in Hex and if you understand like how Hex can hold parity using the bridge and bridging in liquidity, right? That just because otherwise somebody's going to really double their bags through like I'm saying arbitration. No, arbitrage. You can build your bags through the bridge and liquidity pools if Hex is not holding the price. Which then again, anything that's very very tightly correlated or tied with Hex is a better way of saying that. Like Hedron, right? Then your Hedron is going to hold the same price because of Hex is holding the same price because of the value proposition of Hex is going to hold on Pulse, which means that the value proposition of Hedron is also going to be holding on the other side of the coin as well. So this is going to be freaking fascinating when this launches.
Like we already have so many money. Oh, sorry. I was changing something. It'll come back up in a second. Let's see. Oh, my camera crap out.
This is good. No, this is perfect. This is
okay.
Good.
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can still see you. I can see the Hedron and Icosa logos in the background now.
Okay, I don't see me on, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, we just have money printers for days, basically. That's what we have. We already have 3 money printers now. because Hex, Hedron, Icosa, all of them you can single side stake and then you earn coins, and then you just double it up on PulseChain, so you have 6 money printers all going on at the same time.
Fucking crazy shit. It's about to go down.
All with the same value prop. And yeah, maybe one is more valuable than the other price wise, but like because we're in here now, whichever we're going to have the one that's more valuable. So it's all profit at the end of the day.
Do you think that's going to take place? I don't think that's necessarily going to take place. I don't know.
I have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see parity. I wouldn't be surprised if Ethereum is cheaper. I wouldn't be surprised if Ethereum is more expensive than PulseChain for some time. I thought about it, and I have no benchmark or way to reasonably assess what's going to happen. I just don't know.
Well, if you think about, and this is the first time I'm doing this, and then we can wrap things up here. But if you have an HSI on Ethereum or you have an HSI on Pulse, and they both go for liquidation, then if I have to pay $1,000 worth of Hedron to get this HSI that is probably valued more than that, or otherwise why would I buy it, right? Mm-hmm. Then if I were to go over to, because when launch happens, if launch happens at Pulse, right, assuming it does, and assuming that there's any like tiny little bit of use for Icosa, there's going to be HSIs that are in transition, right? So they're going to be like going up for liquidation or going through that process at the time, which means that if they're not holding parity, I can take my $1,000 in Ethereum Hedron, bring it through the bridge to Pulse, and now I have wrapped Ethereum on PulseChain. And then I can take that, if they're not selling at the same price, and swap it for Hedron to actually go in and buy those at a discount, right?
Yep.
Am I following through this correctly? Am I missing a step here? Right? Then I'd be able to buy the same stake for a discount. That's going to give me the same amount of Hex on the Pulse side. So I think that they're going to hold value. I think that they're probably both going to hold the value of these.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly plausible outcome, and I think your reasoning is correct. There just could be the market does weird things, So sometimes the market doesn't, what happens actually is not always completely logical from our understanding going into it ahead of time. But that scenario laid out, I think, is perfectly plausible and even probable to a solid degree.
Because otherwise, if I could get, if the price was lower. If the price of, say, Pulse Hedron was lower, then I bridge over $1,000 worth, and then I have $1,000 that's gonna be pegged, right? Because I can just bring it back to the bridge. Yep. So if it's not then I can profit from that, right? But to bring it to the step of bringing it on a DEX and then converting it to Hedron on Pulse, not the wrapped version, if it's a 2-to-1, then I could get double my Hedron bag on that side. And use that Hedron to go through and buy the HSI or whatever. I want to acknowledge you for coming on, dude, and sharing all your insights and your thoughts with us. Do you want?
Go ahead.
Do you want to have any closing thoughts here or anything like that?
No, I mean, I always have a great time talking and chatting with you, Sam. It's been definitely one of the highlights of my YouTube journey. Talking through all this stuff. You got great questions. And I appreciate your enthusiasm. And, you, GRC, and Bullish have been extremely kind to me. So, I'm always a friend of crypto in the morning, crypto in the evening, etc. But no, I had a great time. I think we talked about some cool stuff. I think everybody got a nice, solid bit of information. That's my Twitter down there. Go give me a follow. Like we were saying before, I offer consultations now. And so the price of those consultations is $400 an hour. And for the first 10 people who sign up, you get 50% off. So that's $200. And right now there are 6 slots, 6 50% consultations still up for grabs. But please don't feel any obligation to buy this. This is only for people who can afford it, want a little bit more personalized education, want maybe a sounding board for their strategies. But you can find pretty much everything or the vast majority of what I'm going to talk about with you on my stream somewhere. It's just if you want to kind of speed up the process and use me like one-on-one to ask your questions and build a conversation, like a personalized conversation for you, that's what this is for. Find me on YouTube at Crypto Sloth, and you can find me every once in a while in Crypto in the Morning. I like to run in for 10 to 15 minutes on my lunch break every once in a while. I'll get the text from like Bullish or something. It's like, yo, we're talking about Hedron. Come hang out. Yes. I got my lunch sitting in front of me. Like, all right, I'll be there. I'll get there. I got 10 minutes. But,
I love those guest appearances. They're awesome.
Yeah, a lot of fun. But yeah, man. Sam, we're gonna get you on my channel soon again for round 2. So interview with Sam round 2.
Yes. Okay, cool. And we'll take us out of here. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. This has been awesome. Let me know what you guys think of this down below in the comments, or jump over to Twitter. There's a link in the description for my Twitter, and you can come over there and say, what's up? Like, hey, Sam, you didn't ask about this shit, or whatever the case is, or did you think about this? Share it with me on Twitter. Appreciate you guys. Peace.
Young folks, you dripping on them motherfucker.
With your heart. With your heart.
Bought my hex from the fucking start. Point one, everything we mark. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hit restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hit restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the hex, he is mooning. Looking at wives they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. PulseChain's out, now get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex I been eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this PulseChain lingo. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this PulseChain lingo. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hit restart. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday